Hi, I'm Marianne Kitten. I've spent the last 30 years as a caregiver for my children, my parents, and sometimes even my husband. I also worked for 11 years as a claims representative for the Social Security Administration. A few months ago, my husband and I decided to take the leap and retire early. We've been working toward this moment our entire married lives. He recently told his employer and will be spending the next year finishing up projects and training his replacement. I, on the other hand, am preparing us for the adventures ahead. So buckle up and join me for this wild and scary ride. Welcome to the whole kitten caboodle. My husband and I come from a conservative Texas farming background, and from an early age were taught the value of living within our means. So from the very beginning of our careers, we've been saving up for our retirement. As early as I can remember, my husband shared his dream of retiring by age 52. He said he didn't want to spend his whole life working and wanted to be able to travel and see the world while he was still in good enough shape to do it. We met while I was working for the Social Security Administration, the absolute perfect place to develop good habits for saving and building a nest egg for retirement. From the very beginning of my career, they actually trained us on saving habits that would hopefully lead to a secure retirement. I remember getting lots of education about planning retirement at work. Probably because less than a decade before I was hired, the U.S. government had switched from the CSRS pension to FERS, and everyone was still getting used to the system. Instead of the civil service retirement system, which was a defined pension plan that had been around since 1920, U.S. government employees were now covered under the Federal Employees Retirement System, a three-tiered system that included the Thrift Savings Plan, a government version of the 401k, IRA, or pre-tax retirement account, Social Security benefits, which had been around since 1934 in one form or another, but was not part of the civil service retirement system, and Tier 3, a basic annuity similar to the CSRS pension, but much, much smaller. I was young and my income was small, but I started contributions into my thrift savings plan. I also made monthly contributions directly from my paychecks to purchase EE savings bonds. I know, super exciting investments. But the fun was getting the paper certificates in the mail. Being a conservative young person working for a conservative agency, it's no surprise that I had my TSP invested pretty conservatively. In fact, my only choices at that time were the G fund, which was invested in government securities, the C fund, an index fund that tracks the performance of the S&P 500, and the F fund, which tracks the Bloomberg U.S. Aggregate Bond Index. I did have money in the stock market, but buying individual stocks was not an option. Keep in mind the World Wide Web was not a thing, and companies like Robinhood didn't exist. You had to pay a fee for every stock trade, and having a brokerage account was not even remotely a part of my world. Until I married my husband, that is, and was introduced to the outrageous world of E-Trade. My husband worked for an up-and-coming computer company, and he and his friends were immersed in the glorious world of day trading. Tech stocks were going up, 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 and everyone from my uncle to the postman and everyone in between was trading stock tips and investing like it was free money. It was so much fun to log in and see what the market had done that day. We were all dreaming of quitting our jobs and becoming day traders. We could not lose. Well, if you haven't guessed, as soon as you start getting stock tips from your hairstylist, it's the beginning of the end. I will never forget when my husband put $24,000 into a great tip from a friend on a .com startup, only to see it fall and fall and fall until it wasn't even worth a dime. You couldn't sell it. It was worthless except as a tax write-off. The tech bubble had burst, we just didn't know it yet. It was March 2000, and I was pregnant with our first child, so we were distracted with other things. After she was born, we decided it would be best if I left my job to take care of our home and our child. That's when I made my most memorable financial mistake. I closed my TSP account and moved my money into an IRA at Morgan Stanley, heavily concentrated in, you guessed it, tech stocks. Surely that was a brilliant plan. Buy low and sell high. I basically caught a falling knife and learned the valuable lesson in the process. By the end of the .com era, I had lost more than half of my retirement savings. I finally cut my losses and moved my entire IRA to Vanguard to take advantage of their low-fee index funds and hopefully do a better job of diversifying. The The dot-com crash was horrible, but the lesson we learned was a good one. We were lucky to learn it so early in our investing lives. Diversify. And don't forget that what goes up can easily come back down. And the lessons we've learned in the 20-something years since then have been just as valuable. So there we were, a couple with a baby living on one income, knowing we wanted to retire before we could start receiving Social Security benefits, and even earlier than we could start taking money from our pre-tax retirement plans without a penalty. We knew a fourth leg of our retirement would be particularly important: a taxable brokerage account and regular savings. If my husband was going to be able to live out his dream of retirement by age 52, we would have to save and save and save some more. We couldn't give up on the stock market. We just had to figure out a safer way to invest. So I started my new job: mom, homemaker, and financial planner. I read and researched. The internet was becoming a thing, a big thing, and I found so many sources of knowledge. I learned about Vanguard and Bogleheads, drip investments, and the FIRE movement. If you want to know more about these things, let me know and I'll make a video, but there's thousands of videos out there on all of them. Our investments were no longer sexy. I bought things like ExxonMobil, Coca-Cola, and General Electric. We also made regular investments into the Vanguard 500 Index Fund. Boring. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have been even more boring and put it all in the index fund, but I was still in the mindset of buying individual stocks. With drips, I could make regular investments using dollar cost averaging into a portfolio of individual stocks with a good history of increasing dividends, as well as reinvesting the dividends, all with low or no fees. Boring and complicated. Slowly but steadily, our portfolio grew until we got where we are today. 1 year from cutting off the work paycheck and taking the plunge and crossing our fingers that we have learned enough lessons in the last 3 decades to make our own paycheck from the savings we've worked so hard to build. So life happened, and my husband is a little older than 52. We thought it would be a good idea to have income while we had a child in college. Now it is retirement by age 55, and that doesn't sound too bad. Welcome to our journey.